All right, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is, wherever in this world it is that you are. Welcome once more to another live stream of Alexandra Mayers' page by page reading and commentary of the modern English version of the Bible. I hope all of you are feeling good today. We're, I guess, in the middle of the week, beginning to middle of the week. I am feeling great today. I feel very energized. I just feel good. So let's go ahead and go back into the second book of Samuel, chapter 18. And on a personal note, I am really looking forward to the year 2026. Early in the year, I have a West Coast trip that I have already in part put together for myself. It should be a lot of fun. And I'm hoping that some of the people I meet can work with me on doing some homeless outreaches. I think that's something that would be very productive for me to do. And I have a feeling that some of the people I'll be meeting will definitely want to work with me on that because they already do help the homeless to an extent. So that's going to be the kind of thing that I really put my energy into going forward because I have been so blessed, and I just kind of feel like I need to put my good energy out there into the world a bit more. But anyway, here we go. Second book of Samuel, chapter 18. We're still in the story of David, and David's going through a lot right now, but let's find out what happens. David mustered the people who were with him, and he set over them commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds. Then David dispatched the people one third under the command of Joab, one third under the command of Abishai, and the son of Zeruiah, and brother of Joab, and one third under the command of Ittai the Gittite. Then David said to the people, I myself will go out with you. But the people said, You should not go, for if we retreat, they will not be concerned about us. Even if half of us die, they will not be concerned about us. But now you are worth 10,000 of us. Therefore, it would be better to assist us from the city. The king said to them, I will do what seems best to you. He's a good leader. He's a good leader to listen to his people at this point. So the king stood beside the gate while all the people went out by hundreds and thousands. The king commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, deal gently with the young man Absalom. All of the people heard the king instruct the commanders concerning Absalom. Wow. So, I mean, despite everything that Absalom is trying to do to David, David is still compassionate. And he was compassionate to Saul also, when I think about it. Maybe he was overly compassionate as I think about it. I mean, that's just me being a rather aggressive person, but seriously, I think if David, there were times it seems that David was a bit harsher, but I guess he considers Absalom his solid family and he doesn't want harm to come upon him. Wow. So the people went out toward Israel. So the people went out toward Israel in the field, but the fighting occurred in the forest of Ephraim. The people of Israel were defeated there by the servants of David. That day, the defeat was extensive, 20,000 men. The fighting spread across the land. The people consumed by the forest were more numerous than those consumed by the sword that day. Interesting. So it seems like God's stepping in. People are dying in the woods, unknown reasons as to why. Absalom was encountered by some of the servants of David. Now Absalom was riding on his mule. When the mule went under the branches of a very large tree, his head was caught in the tree. He was left in midair while the mule that was under him kept going. It's almost like these trees are fighting for David. Maybe they are. Miracle. And a certain man saw him and told Joab, "Behold, I saw Absalom hanging in a tree." That is very odd. Huh. See, I guess we could go to the ancient aliens theories in this chapter again. Was something going on in that forest? They kept saying, earlier in this chapter, it's saying that the forest was consuming people, the forest of Ephraim. That is interesting. And now Absalom gets tangled up in the branches of a tree. It's like it's an enchanted forest. Or there was something going on in that forest. Interesting. I'm going to have to research this chapter a little bit more later on today on my own. Joab said to the man who was reporting to him, "What? You saw him? Why did you not strike him on the spot, sending him to the ground? I would have given you 10 shekels of silver and a belt." The man said to Joab, "Not even if I had felt the weight of 1,000 shekels of silver in my hand, would I have laid a hand on the king's son." So don't forget, Absalom is David's son, one of his sons. "In our hearing, the king commanded you, Abishai and Ittite, saying, 'Beware lest anyone touch the young man Absalom. Otherwise, I would have worked falsehood against my own life. For nothing is hidden from the king, and you yourself would have set yourself against me.'" Interesting. Interesting. So David made it known that he didn't want anything to happen to his son. And these people did respect that, but it's almost like some sort of miracle stepped in to where no person had to physically touch Absalom, but that tree did. I think that was the power of God, personally. That was a miracle. Something is going on in that forest. Then Joab said, "I will not waste any more time with you." He took 3 spears in his hand and thrust them into the heart of Absalom while he was still alive in the midst of the tree. Uh-oh, shouldn't have done that. Then 10 young men, armor bearers for Joab, gathered around and struck down Absalom, killing him. So Absalom dies anyway. When Joab blew the horn, the people returned from pursuing Israel, for Joab held back the people. They took Absalom, disposed of him in a large pit in the forest, and piled over him a very large heap of stones. Then all Israel fled, everyone to his home. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and set up for himself a memorial stone in the valley of the king, for he said, "I have no son by whom my name may be remembered." So he named the memorial stone after himself, and to this day it is called the Monument of Absalom. Interesting. David mourns. Then Ahima, Ahimaaz, that's a hard thing to say, Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said, "Allow me to run and bring the news to the king that the Lord has delivered him from the hand of his enemies." But Joab said to him, "You will not be a man who bears news today. You may bear news another day. Today you will not bear news because the king's son is dead." Then Joab said to Cushite, "Go report to the king what you have seen." The Cushite bowed to Joab, then ran off. Ahimaaz again said to Joab, "Whatever may happen, let me run also after the Cushite." Then Joab said, "Why is it you want to run, my son?" There is no messenger's reward for you to obtain. Whatever happens, I want to run." So he said to him, "All right, run." So Ahimaaz ran by way of the plain and passed the Cushite. Now David was sitting between the two gates when the watchman went up to the roof of the gate, to the city wall. He lifted his eyes and saw a man running by himself. The watchman called and told the king. The king said, "If he is alone, there is news in his mouth." And he came ever closer. Then the watchman saw another man running. The watchman called to the gatekeeper and said, "Look, there's another man running alone." The king said, "He also is bringing news." The watchman said, "I think that the running of the first one is like the running of Ahimaaz." The king said, "He is a good man and comes with good news." Then Ahimaaz called to the king and said, "All is well." He bowed down to the ground before the king and said, "Blessed be the Lord your God, who has handed over men who raised their hand against my lord the king." The king said, "Is it well for the young man Absalom?" Ahimaaz said, "I saw a great commotion when Joab sent the servant of the king, your servant, but I do not know what it was." The king said, "Step aside and stand here." So he stepped aside and stood in position. And behold, the Cushite came and said, "Good news for my lord the king, for today the Lord has delivered you from those who rose up against you." The king said to the Cushite, "Is it well for the young man Absalom?" The Cushite said, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who would rise up against you to do harm become as the young man is." The king was deeply moved and went up to the upper chamber of the gate and wept. As he went, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I could have given my death in your stead. Absalom, my son, my son." So even though Absalom wanted to kill his dad, David still mourned and felt bad for this about the situation. That would be hard. That would be really, really hard to go through. All right. Trustee Apeko is saying it's called guerrilla warfare. There were no aliens or fighting trees. You don't know that. I understand your perspective. Maybe you don't believe in miracles or anything out of the ordinary, and you're entitled to your opinion. But I do. And I think all kinds of things were happening in the Bible that cannot be explained. I really do. And I do think that sometimes plants, trees, inanimate objects, even, because plants and trees, those are alive. But I do think at times God can do quite a bit to people. And in that particular situation, as you heard, David did not want any people to harm his son. And God would have known that. So I think that those could have been trees that God was maneuvering in order to get Absalom. And God at the time didn't want David to die, and Absalom knew that his father most likely would not harm him. But I personally do think that a miracle happened in that forest of Ephraim. So I'm going to do some research on that, see what other people think. But it's good to have the opinion of non believers in here at times. It is good because that tells me exactly what a lot of people in this world think. And it's a shame because God is great. The power of God is great. The love of God is great. And it really is a shame that people are not acknowledging or believing in God or miracles anymore, especially at this time of year. To me, a person isn't really a complete person unless they believe in God. That's truly how I feel. And I do feel bad for a lot of people. But anyway, take care. Have a great day. If I have the energy, I'll come back this evening and read another chapter of the Bible. Bye bye.